Hey Netocratic, this is Justin Wilcox from the blog Customer Dev Labs, and I wanted to thank you for the fantastic questions you sent here, and I'm really excited to answer them. So let's fire away. First thing you ask is, how did I encounter lean startup, and why do I think it's the right way for success? So I encountered it after the failure of my first startup. I was talking to a friend of mine who'd actually taken a class with Steve Blank, and he sort of offhandedly recommended the book, The Four Steps to the Epiphany, and I read about it on Amazon and seen it had some great reviews, and so I was vaguely interested in it, and I picked it up and started reading, and despite the awful typos and the bad graphics and the bad layout and everything bad about the book, it completely resonated with me because it highlighted exactly what went wrong in my startup. So more about that on some of the questions, but that's basically how I encountered it. And as far as like why do I think it's the right way, the truth is the right way might be putting it a little strong. I think it's the best way that we know about right now. Um, it's we'll probably come up with other tricks and techniques. There's, lean and customer development won't be the end all be all, but right now it seems to be the collection of best practices that we know of that can help us invalidate bad ideas, businesses that are never going to be successful very quickly, and also help us pivot very quickly to companies that are more likely to succeed. So the right way, I'm not sure, but definitely the best way that I've heard of so far. And one of the things that all of us as lean practitioners are on the lookout for are ways to improve the process itself. All right, so next up, can you tell us a bit more about your experience after leaving Microsoft and starting your first company? What was it and what went wrong? So, yeah, I was at Microsoft. I was there for 5 years out of college. Had a really good time, actually, except that I don't want to work for someone else. So I left when some family friends of mine mentioned that, in their business, it's a healthcare medical record processing business. They said, you know what, we need some software that enables us to remotely access medical records. And I looked at the technologies, some of the competitors that were out there, and I thought, I could totally build this thing. So I did. But I didn't ask any of the questions that I needed to about their business. I didn't know. I didn't. I didn't really know why they needed the software. I didn't know how often they were going to use it. I didn't know what it would take to get the software installed. I basically didn't understand any of the real problems that my customers were facing. All I knew was, hey, they asked me to build this thing, so I'm going to go build it. And I thought, well, at least I'll have one customer, and there are lots of other companies just like the one who's asking me for this product, so it should be no problem to just go sell it to all these other customers. But it turns out that was a problem. Even the company that asked us to build it, they didn't even need it that badly. So when we were all done, I spent 18 months, some of that while I was still at Microsoft, but I spent, a fair bit of time, even after Microsoft, nights, weekends, all the time hacking away on this thing. And at the end of the day, it wasn't solving a major problem, and the people we really needed to get buy-off from was the hospital, not just our clients. And it turns out we weren't solving a problem at all for the hospital. So it was really just an app that shouldn't have been built in the first place. And this is sort of a trap that I see a lot of engineers fall into. We come up with an idea, we think it's awesome, it's going to be great. And in fact, there was a lot of innovation in the app that I built, but because it doesn't solve a core problem, it never got off the ground. Okay, so that was what about medical record processing. What went wrong? Nobody gave it. No one cared. Okay, so what advice do I have for entrepreneurs that I learned from my experience? Well, the biggest advice is definitely that you gotta identify the hair on fire problem you're solving for someone. We were solving kind of a little problem, but it wasn't such a big problem that someone was going to invest and take a bet on me as a startup, right? So one of the things we have to recognize as new companies is that there's an inherent level of trust that big brands have that we do not. So if we're going to get a customer to give us their hard-earned money, we have to jump the gap of trust. We have to be solving a problem that's so important to them, they're willing to look past the fact that we've never done anything before in our lives. So whether it's a consumer or a business, who our customer is, we've got to be able to solve such a big problem that they're willing to take a leap of faith on us and give us the money to solve their problem. So that's the biggest piece of advice. The other piece of advice is that, if we're thinking problem oriented, that all of our businesses need to be focused on solving a problem, the very first customer whose problem we need to find out is our own. So by that I mean, starting a company is a crazy endeavor. In fact, almost everyone who does has no right doing it. We go to college to learn specific skills. Mine was how to develop. With some people, marketing or whatever, right? No one or very few people go to school to learn how to start a company. Even business degrees, that's not how to start a company. That's how to manage a company or, take over an existing business. So we are going to do this thing that we have no education around doing. That's risky. It's fraught with opportunity costs. So there's all sorts of reasons why to not do this. But the most important thing is for people and founders to understand what problem is starting a company going to solve for you. What is it about your life that you're trying to change by starting a company? If you're really honest with yourself and you write down, here's the biggest problem with my work life. Here's the biggest problem with my life in general. If you write those things down and understand that, look, at the end of the day, that's the problem I'm trying to solve for me, it can help you release your emotional attachment to a specific product that you have in mind. So in my case, I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to have financial freedom. I wanted to do a couple things. And it turns out that I didn't need that healthcare software company to go do that. I could go do something else. And it turns out that healthcare software is boring, and it's not a place where I get to use my skills, and it's not a place where I get to interact with people a lot. So it turns out that wasn't the best business for me anyway. So the opportunity, take the time to really understand what problem does starting a company solve for you, and then use that as the focus for all of your energies. From there, it can free you up to let go of any ideas that you might have that you think the world needs, but ultimately don't. All right, next up. What can you say about the startups I currently work on? So, I am a very proud founder of a stealth startup. Now, stealth has become a bit of a bad word in the Valley for good reason. Most people, when they're in stealth mode, they think it's because people are going to steal their crappy idea. They're worried about big competitors swallowing them, blah, 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 blah. There's a bunch of stuff that doesn't really matter. They're also missing out on the key portion of the key thing that's hardest about starting a company, which is telling people about your product. So you're not getting feedback. You're not letting the world hear about it. So it's really a bad idea. But in my case, I'm stealthy, and in fact, I'm so stealthy that I don't even know what I'm building. And the reason is that I have chosen a customer segment that I am just providing value to. At this point, I love my customers, and so all I'm doing is providing value. And when they show me a problem that they have that I can monetize in a sustainable way, then I'll go build a business there. And maybe they won't, so maybe there's no business here at all. But the truth is, I love my customers, and so I'm just going to keep providing value to them, and hopefully I'll see a problem that I can monetize in a win-win way for myself and my customers. So until then, that's all I got. Stealth mode. All right. Many lean experts say go out and find your customers. But what happens next? What can you actually learn from that process? So I love this question in particular because it really sort of hints to the mindset of a typical entrepreneur. When you're asking sort of what can you actually learn from the process? Well, the truth is you learn everything from that process. But I imagine what's going on in the head of someone who would ask this question is they've got an idea for a product, and they're going to, why would I go out and talk to my customers? What can I actually gain from asking my customers about it? Well, the truth is that your customers don't give a shit about your product. In fact, no one buys products. People buy solutions to problems. So you can make up products all day long. You can go around hula hoops for dogs, edible condoms. You can make up solutions all day long, but it doesn't mean that you can actually build a business out of it, and doesn't mean that anyone's going to buy it. What you got to do instead is identify people's problems first, and then figure out if you can solve them. So what happens when you go out and talk to customers? When you talk to a customer segment, you figure out what their problems are. And then once you've got that information, you can figure out, well, can I solve it? And can I solve it in a sustainable way? And can I solve it in a scalable way? And then you go out and do that. So basically, everything happens when you go out and talk to customers. One more point on that. Talking to customers requires interviewing. It requires conversations. There's a lot of people out there who think surveying counts as talking to customers, and it doesn't. We can get into that in more detail, but the short answer is everything happens outside the building, and it happens when you have real conversations with real people. All right. What are the biggest mistakes lean startups or wannabe lean startups make? Well, one of them is what I just said, mistaking surveys for customer interviews. Other mistakes that they make are confusing lean with something else. A lot of people think lean means cheap, lean means small, lean means bootstrap. It's just an unfortunate synonym of lean. That's not what lean means in this context. Lean means eliminating waste. So you can have a very funded company be very lean if they're focused on eliminating waste. And the waste we're talking about is the waste of time and energy building products that no one cares about. So let's just all be clear. You can be a big company and you can be lean. You can be a small company and be very unlean. Lean is about eliminating waste in your process. Other mistakes people make, basically false positive feedback loops. Asking questions. So even when you interview, asking questions like, would you ever use a product like blah, blah, blah? Or would you like to blah, blah, blah? Or would you pay blah, 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 blah for this product? So we can get into like how you should actually ask those questions. But the sort of the meat of it is you need to be in problem identification mode and finding these problems, not trying to sneakily validate the thing that's in your head. So when you start asking questions about the future, like would you ever blah, 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 what you're really trying to do is you're trying to subconsciously get someone to agree and say, yes, I would go do that. So you're making it too easy on yourself. What you need to do is say, when was the last time you experienced blah problem? Tell me about that time. So you need to figure out if people are actually experiencing this problem, how often they're experiencing it, what's the hardest part about that problem, why it's a problem. So you really need to go into like understanding your customer's worldview as opposed to like trying to get someone to validate this thing that you're emotionally attached to. All right, what can founders learn from my blog? So Customer Dev Labs is dedicated to tactical, practical tips and tricks on lean startup. So there's a lot of great resources, whether it be Startup Owner's Manual, the Lean Startup. There's a lot of great books about the theory of this stuff. My blog is dedicated to my experiences and the other experiences of founders I know who are trying this stuff and how we're actually getting it to work or how we're not getting it to work. So when I first read the 4 Steps to the Epiphany, I thought, this is amazing, this is fantastic. How do I get out of the building? How do I interview customers? What do I ask? How do I ask for the interview? What do I do with the results? So I had a bunch of questions and I was really excited, and it turns out that other people have those questions too. So that's what the blog is focused on. How do you send cold emails? What are you asking them to get someone to agree to an interview? What do you ask during the interview? And then a bunch of other things, like how do we optimize price? How do we optimize the name of our product? How do we go get press? When should we get press? What's the best way to optimize our pitch for journalists? So yeah, really practical stuff on how to get out of the building and get the information you need to build a successful company. And finally, what will I do in Zagreb? And can I tell us more about the hackathon? So it looks like I'm going to be doing a number of events in Zagreb. We're doing an event on the 31st. It's going to be sort of an introduction to Lean with some hands-on workshops. So it looks like it'll be about a 2-hour session. I'll do a little bit of talking and some brief introductions, and then we're going to get really hands-on, and we're going to have everybody there. Hopefully do at least some level of a business model canvas, get some feedback on that. Hopefully start segmenting our customers, prioritizing those segments, and then maybe get some interviewing skills in. So like the blog, it's going to be very practical and very tactical. We'll probably do a very similar session to that on the 14th at one of the business schools. And then we're thinking about doing an event maybe around Silicon Valley, like just what life is like here. If anyone's curious about that, I've been to a few startup communities around the world, and just to be able to juxtapose the difference between what life is like in this bubble and what life is like outside the bubble. And I think that really that event sort of speaks to the power of Founders Institute in particular. There are a lot of okay accelerators out there. People are this is so new. People are trying to figure out how this all works. But Founders Institute has been around for the longest time, and they've been doing an incredible job of engaging mentors, so enabling people like me to be able to help other entrepreneurs around the world. Whether we're from the Valley or elsewhere. And then they also have a constantly evolving curriculum. So when I got involved with Founders Institute about a little over a year ago, there was literally no mention of customer development or lean startup at all, none, because it's sort of a fairly new concept and their curriculum had not been revised yet. But over the last year or so, I myself and a number of directors of Founders Institute have been sort of putting in and inserting customer development and lean stuff, and FI is very iterative in their approach, and as they see this stuff works, they've now gone and revised all of their curriculum to include some of the latest thoughts on how to do this stuff. So related to Silicon Valley and FI and the program that's bringing me out there is basically like a representation of what Silicon Valley is around the world, and it has the latest thoughts on how to teach this stuff and how to engage people and how to build successful companies. So although it will be FI related, just trying to sort of bring some of that Silicon Valley mentality outside of the world, just to help people get a better understanding of what the entrepreneurial energy is. So I think that's on the 7th, if we can make that happen. Startup Weekend, I'll be at Startup Weekend. I don't know if they're going to let me write code, but I kind of like to. So we'll see about that. They may make me judge. And then on the hackathon is on the 9th, I believe. I think that's going to be a one-day hackathon. It's going to be focused on, I think, like a civic project in nature. I've seen this work really well. Puerto Rico did something similar, and they just blew the doors off that place. Had some really amazing apps built in a very short period of time. So hopefully we'll get to do something similar in Zagreb. And again, basically this is just I just love writing code. I love being around developers. So this has been a chance to do that. But also hopefully bring the developer community. Maybe they're already involved in the startup scene very heavily, but if not, I'd love to just keep their energy and just be around them. So that's what that's going to be about, building something hopefully to help the citizens of Zagreb, but also maybe an excuse for me to do less talking and more coding. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much my time in Zagreb, and then of course I'll be mentoring at an FI session as well. So that will be more of the same, and that's those FI sessions are really fun. They're a combination of pitching, so you get to try putting together a pitch, and then you get evaluated from mentors. You get actually scored, and then you get some feedback on your pitching ability. And I've seen some people go from very nervous, unconfident speakers to bringing the house down over the course of their FI semester in terms of presentation and confidence and understanding their market. So those are a lot of fun. Plus, of course, there's mentoring involved, and so we get to have interactions. And then typically we go out and socialize afterwards. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, so those are the questions. They're fantastic, by the way. I think they're really interesting questions, and I'd love to engage more. So please let me know if there's anything I can do to help. You can reach me, justin@customerdevlabs.com. I will also be available for office hours, I think, on the 8th. I think that will be at um, the city-run incubator. I don't have all the details on that, but I should be available, and I'd love for anyone to come by and chat and do and see if I can help with anything. I'm also going to try and set up some Skype office hours so that if I can't reach you or you can't reach me, then we can just sit together and have half-hour discussion over Skype or Google Hangout, and if I can help, I'd be happy to. So. All right, let me know if you have any other questions, and hopefully I'll see you on the blog. You'll be able to schedule those sessions, by the way, on the blog. There's just a little button that says free startup help with me, and you'll be able to schedule those sessions. All right, have a good one.